When you hear the truth and you know deep down within your heart and soul that it is the truth, and yet you still refuse to act upon it, it is then that your spirit begins to truly die. Because that very moment proves to yourself that you are in fact mentally enslaved. Telling the truth is dangerous, given that evil, soulless people rules the world. Those who benefit from lies. Nonetheless, those of us who know the truth must teach African proverb. Here's a hidden truth. Through unrelenting demoralization, Black people are being continuously brainwashed to think in ways that are against our own interests and that instead serves the interests of the white society. White propagandists are continuously deploying a Black racially demoralizing ideological subversion system against the Black population. Ideological subversion destroys a people from within by changing them to think and behave in ways that are against their own self-interests. Ideological subversion is an offensive psychological warfare tactic that uses disinformation and misinformation as a weapon to change a people's behaviors and beliefs in ways that are against their interests and that instead serve the interests of those who are funding the ideological subversion system. It's the absolute true reason why many Black people now perceive ourselves as being our own worst enemies and reveres Caucasians in spite of such a brutally horrific history of the contrary. It's also why if you enter a crowded room of Black people and you yelled out the question, who are our worst enemies? Many will respond without giving a second thought by saying that we Black people are our own worst enemies. It's also why whenever the topic of Black liberation is ever mentioned, many Black people now respond by saying, I don't want to hear that Black liberation shit. It's also why if you ask many Black women who are their worst enemies, instead of saying the white oppressive forces are, many will automatically say Black men are. It's also why many Black men in America now become angry when called an African, but smile when called a nigger. It's also why many Black people feel literally grateful that slavery happened. Through unrelenting Black racially demoralizing propaganda, this ideological subversion system has been used to brainwash Black people to think in ways that are against our own interests and that instead serves the interests of the white society. The term ideological subversion was coined by Yuri Bezmenov, a former KGB expert in psychological warfare who defected to the United States during the early 1970s. Bezmenov said that whenever those in power want to brainwash a targeted population to think and behave the way they want them to, they always heavily demoralizes them. Whenever people are heavily demoralized, this divides them, makes them self-loathing, shifts their collective aggressions away from their true enemies and redirect it towards themselves. It also makes them more compliant with the dominance of other groups over their lives. Many will even prefer it. Keeping the targeted population within this condition makes them much more easier to control. Dr. Juice Below, a psychoanalyst, said the demoralization of a targeted audience is the next step in successful mind control. Joseph Goebbels, Adolf Hitler's chief propagandist, said that demoralize the enemy from within is the warfare of the future. Heavy, persistent demoralization of a targeted population is very effective. It's a very effective strategy used for controlling large populations. Once the group has been totally demoralized, they are programmed to think and react to certain stimulus in certain patterns. Some of these victims, you cannot change their minds. Even if you expose them to authentic, true information, they won't accept it. They are basically stuck within a state of demoralization. Demoralization of a targeted population makes it hard for people to access true information. Even if you try proving to them that their beliefs are untrue, it's difficult to change their mindset. They will stick to their illogical behaviors. Exposure to true information doesn't matter to them anymore. A person who has been demoralized is unable to access true information. The facts tell them nothing. Even if you shower them with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if you take them by force and show them something other than what they've been taught to believe during the demoralization process, they'll refuse to accept it. You cannot change the basic perception and illogical behavior. In other words, these people are stuck and the demoralization process is complete. With time, most of these demoralized people will then start demoralizing each other. They'll start putting each other down. This described nefarious demoralization, psychological warfare condition and process has never been abandoned. It's the psychological warfare tactic that's currently being deployed against Black people by white oppressive forces. It's no strange occurrence that many Black people are now self-hating, perceive themselves as being our own worst enemies, and think favorably of Caucasians, in spite of such a brutally horrific history to the contrary. These thoughts among Black people that clearly benefits the white society were deliberately indoctrinated into our collective minds through unrelenting Black racially demoralizing propaganda. Presently, white government agents that specialize in psychiatry and propaganda, they work unrelentingly behind the scenes, manipulating the collective minds of the Black masses. Under the guise of merely preventing dissent from rising among the Black masses against the white status quo, these men actually engage in many nefarious schemes against the Black population. These men analyzes and studies everything about the Black population. Our beliefs, our likes, our dislikes, our strengths, and our vulnerabilities. This surveillance information is gathered, and then decisions are made on which fraudulent stories to produce to best create certain psychological feelings among Black people that aids the white society in maintaining its social dominance and control over Black people. These men govern our minds, molds our opinions, and shapes our perceptions in ways that protect and serve the system of white supremacy. It's the hidden truth that white oppressive forces don't want Black people to ever figure out. Now, they determined that an aggravating core factor for the unprecedented unified Black protest movement during the 1960s was caused by an elevated and unifying Black collective self-esteem brought on by the emergence of that decade's Black Pride movement. They therefore logically determined that they could subdue unified Black protests by keeping the collective self-esteem of the Black masses very low. Moreover, that objective could be easily achieved by merely deploying propaganda campaigns that keeps the Black masses believing the fraudulent worst narratives about ourselves. Moreover, it's a process that is overt and in the open. All you have to do is just open your eyes and start critically thinking. It's in fact so obvious that it's only by not critically thinking that it cannot be seen. For when critically thinking, can't you see just how cartoonishly unrealistic it actually is that virtually all information that we receive about ourselves from white sources are consistently negative and Black racially demoralizing? It's not statistically possible for all narratives that a people receive about themselves to be consistently negative and demoralizing and still be accurate. Not possible. This cartoonishly unrealistic scenario exists because it's actually a Black racially demoralizing psychological warfare propaganda campaign that shapes our minds and serves the white society. The white media's unrelenting negative depiction of Black people that amplifies the negative to the point that it distorts reality is much more than just biased media reporting. It's actually an insidious, Black racially demoralizing, divide and rule psychological warfare campaign. Demoralized divide and rule is a method of maintaining control over a targeted population through constant and unrelenting demoralization in order to create self-hate and division between the population. It is a well-proven tactic. This psychological warfare system is being deployed like a massive media marketing campaign that constantly subjects Black people to receiving only the fraudulent worst narratives about ourselves. Within this system, fraudulent Black racially demoralizing propaganda is being pumped unrelentingly into the unsuspecting minds of the black masses without being challenged nor counterbalanced by an equal amount of positive, racially affirming information. It conveys a subliminal message that black people are now our own worst enemies and therefore need whites to govern over our lives. Moreover, that black people should admire, respect, and trust only whites. It also delegitimizes all thoughts of black liberation from the collective consciousness of the black masses. This system is extremely effective because when black people are repetitively presented these noted narratives from trusted white media sources, it can be very difficult to resist its implied propaganda programming, especially when the propaganda is being told daily and so unrelentingly. With time, many black people eventually comes to accept these subliminal program messages, and then we begin functioning based upon them as if they're true, thus to the benefit of the white society while negatively impacting the black population. Its weapon is the message that it repeatedly carries and how it adversely affects the black community in terms of our behavior and how we interact with each other. The ultimate goal is to demoralize black people to such an extent that we begin to doubt our own ability to govern ourselves and believe that we therefore need white people to govern over our lives. Moreover, that we're better off living under white dominance, and therefore we abandon all hopes of ever liberating ourselves. It also creates black self-hatred and disunity, which attacks the core foundation of what bonds us as a people, and we can then be ruled over forever. Through this black racially demoralizing psychological warfare propaganda campaign, white oppressive forces have created a psychological prison for the minds of millions of black people. This system utilizes the immense power that shame has upon the human mind to mentally enslave millions of black people. Those black people who do not critically think never notice their mental change. This is all possible because people are like computers. All you have to do is keep giving them certain information every so often, and you can steer an entire generation of people towards an implied objective. It doesn't matter if the information presented is untrue. Most people will act upon it because they've all been given the same disinformation about themselves. Some black people are basically stuck within this state of demoralization, and it's very difficult to change their minds, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you try to prove that white is not always right and black is not always bad. It is still difficult to change their basic mindset. Exposure to true information does nothing anymore, doesn't matter anymore. The facts tell them nothing. Even if you shower them with all the positive black information that the white society withholds from them and show them the evil information that the white society they hide from them, they'll still insist that white is right and black is bad. You know, some black people have been so heavily demoralized that they find it easier to continue believing the fraudulent words about themselves than to believe that they've been lied to. And when black people have been demoralized, we see them now demoralizing each other. We see this every day among our people. This psychological warfare system provides the white oppressors with their most proficient method used for controlling black people. Because unlike the past blatant racist systems where black people can easily identify and therefore develop counter strategies to overcome, this current system is not easily recognized, nor is it easily comprehended by its black victims. This psychological warfare works so well, in fact, that it not only makes black people more compliant with white dominance over our lives, it in fact causes millions of black people to prefer white dominance over our lives. It is at the root of the feelings of self-contempt and self-hatred that we now see among our population. Brothers and sisters, we have to gain a clear, concise, and accurate understanding of our plight and condition in order to free ourselves. Sadly for us, the oppressed will always believe the fraudulent worst about themselves, as Franz Fanon said. So we're fighting against that programming as well. But remember, the oppressor's depiction of the oppressed is never a true one. It's always negatively distorted to serve the nefarious agendas of the oppressors. This fact has remained consistent throughout history and it is still true now. Brothers and sisters, as long as you keep believing that the Bible is going to save us, you're going to go from your cradle to your grave being mentally enslaved and having lived your life as the white man's fool. As long as you believe that we're controlled by a slave syndrome myth, the same applies to you as well. The time of believing in idiotic things that insults our intelligence is over. You just heard the truth. Now, if you reject the truth, it proves that you are mentally enslaved. One love and peace.